Sweet. So I'm just curious. So what were we looking for in there? What did we find?
Well, I was hoping to find the queen. So in the springtime, sometimes bees like to swarm, and what that means is they take they make a new queen and they take their old queen and half the hive and go find a new place to live because their current home is crowded. So they swarmed twice already. So I wanted to get in there and try to find the new queen and check on her. And oftentimes a really young queen is smaller and faster than an old queen, so we weren't able to actually find her, but we took pictures of all the frames and we're going to go back and look for evidence of her and see if she's been laying eggs.
And now, would the worker bees try to protect her when you're doing something so disturbing to the hive?
They do. Actually, the queen has a court, if you will, and there is a designated group of bees that are constantly surrounding the queen, and they're actually tasting her to gauge her emotional state, and making sure she's okay by touching her and tasting her and smelling her all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to be able to find the queen too, because you can look for the pattern. Obviously, it's really hard to find one little bee in there, but if you look for a pattern of all little bees circling one and almost moving, that's a really good way to be able to identify the queen
Yeah,
there.
especially because they'll all be facing her too. So it's like a ring of bees that are all facing in the same direction, and it's a pattern. Yep.
Yeah.
Neat. Now I'm curious about the different colors with the honeycomb. Could you talk a little bit about what we were seeing?
Sure. So the darker comb is actually older comb. So the wax is actually secreted by the bees, and when it comes out, it's white. And so they secrete it, and then they push it into the comb shape, and so it comes out white. And over time, it gets colored by the pollen and all the other things that are coming in from the environment. So you actually want to replace your wax combs after a few years, just because there are toxins and pesticides in the environment, and they can build up in there.
Oh wow.
Yep.
But you can use that wax for other stuff. You can harvest it and use it, and then they'll make new wax.
And now, do you harvest honeycomb from the hive for yourself?
Well, this is a fairly new hive, and I'm a fairly new beekeeper, so I hope to eventually, but I have yet to do that.
Yep.
How often does it become like mature or ready to harvest?
Ideally, if you're giving them enough space to grow and produce, ideally you'd be able to collect honey every fall.
Oh wow.
Yep. And every hive is different too. So, what Stephanie is experiencing with her hive here may be different than what I'm experiencing with my hive, even though we may start them at the same time. Just like people are, everybody's different.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of watching the patterns and trying to be a good caretaker of bees, because we call it beekeeping and instead of bee having. So in terms of keeping, you're actually playing a role in making sure the bees are just doing their best. Yeah.
Now, you talk about patterns. What are some of these patterns that you're looking for within the bees?
Well, generally speaking, each frame will have like a healthy looking pattern. If it's not, either it's just going to be a honey frame, or if there's brood, and that just means like like the baby bees before they're hatched, it's called a brood cell. And so ideally you'll find the brood cells in the middle on the bottom, and then you'll have the bee bread, what they eat first, ringed around the brood, and then you'll have a little space, and then you'll have your nectar and your honey on the outside. So there'll always be kind of this rainbow pattern if it's a healthy hive.
Yep.
And the brood should be filled in too. If it's a spotty pattern within the brood, then that means that something's wrong with the queen, and she's having some trouble too.
Yeah, with when it's not looking healthy, like Stephanie said, me really spotty. The three most common reasons for colony collapse, which colony is the whole bee family, and there can be anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000 bees in a hive. It's either going to be the queen gets squished maybe when we're in there or dropped, so that could be one. So that would be on our fault. Disease is another. So disease can happen, which would, like American foul brood. is
How
a
do
common
they
disease.
contract these diseases?
Mostly through mites, the same way we contract a lot of diseases like through mosquitoes. They get contracted through mites. So most, other than American foul brood, which is the worst thing that can happen to your hive, most things will be caused by mites.
Yep, and mites they have not been naturally here in this region before like the 70s. They actually came over from a different country.
Invasive.
They were brought, so they're kind of an invasive species for the honeybee. And because bees are not just staying in this property, they can travel a mile or so in any direction to go forage, and that's when they do their little bee dance to tell the others where they're going. They might be coming into contact with other bees that have a disease like that.
And the mites, they actually stick to the bees on their underbelly.
Oh.
So they can bring mites to another hive.
Okay, gotcha. Wow. Go ahead.
That's about all I got there.